Look at these numbers on the screen. These are 3 different retirees and the amount that they've saved for retirement. But here's the twist. I'm going to mix up their actual success rates. Now take a guess. Which one of these people is thriving in retirement and who's struggling and who's somewhere in between? I'll give you 2 seconds to figure it out. Are you surprised? You might have expected that the retiree with the biggest nest egg to have the highest success rate, but that's not always how it works out. And that's exactly why I started this channel, because there's so many people that are being misled about how much they actually need to retire off of. Now, we're constantly told that we need $1 million to retire comfortably, but the truth is that most retirees don't have anywhere near that amount, and they're doing just fine. In this video, we're gonna break down one of the biggest myths in retirement planning, and that's the idea that you need to have this fortune to stop working. Now, because the reality is your savings number doesn't tell the whole story. What matters is how you use your money, your income streams, and your spending habits. So how are these retirees making it work? Well, let's break it down and uncover what really determines a successful retirement. Now, for those that are new here, I'm Jonathan Rankin, the founder of Theorem Wealth. We're a retirement planning firm that helps clients across the country plan and execute their retirement. Now, if you want to know what you need to retire, then use the link in the description to answer a quick quiz where you'll get a personalized overview of what you actually need to retire. Now let's dig in. How many times have you heard someone say, hey, you're going to need $1 million to retire, or maybe even $2 million? Well, let me guess, it's more than once. It's the kind of advice that makes any saver over 50 feel like they're hopelessly behind. You know, the financial media and even some experts throw around these 7-figure magic numbers for retirement, turning our golden years into this looming boogeyman. And if you're 55 and you're nowhere near that $1 million mark, then you might be picturing yourself eating cat food by candlelight in retirement. But guess what? What if that big, scary number is just flat out wrong? You see, there's this myth out there that if you haven't saved millions of dollars, then you can't retire comfortably. And it's all over headlines and retirement blogs, and it's in research papers, and it terrifies hardworking people. And see, the idea is that unless your nest egg has 2 commas, then you're basically one step away from living in your kid's basement. Let's pause and ask ourselves, who's actually saved that kind of money? You see, according to a recent Northwestern Mutual study, Americans now believe they need $1.46 million in savings to retire comfortably. That magic number jumped 15% in 1 year, likely thanks to inflation and other news stories. But here's the kicker. You see, the average amount in retirement accounts in America is nowhere near that. See, in reality, US adults have saved less than $90,000 on average. You heard me right. Add that up. Everyone's IRAs and 401ks, and the typical balance is under 6 figures. And the median, so the middle of the pack saver, nearing retirement only has $132,000 saved. And that's not counting home equity. Just think about that. People think that they need $1.5 million to retire, but in reality, most have a fraction of that. So if the myth were true, then hardly anybody would be retiring, but yet every single year, millions of people actually retire. See, clearly something doesn't add up. That $1 million or bust rule of thumb is misleading, and it's making a lot of good savers worry unnecessarily. So it's time to actually bust this myth with some actual real data, and so let's dig in. Now let's shine a light on what actually happens when people retire. And spoiler alert, guess what? Retirees aren't bankrupt, they're not destitute, and we're talking about even the ones without the giant nest eggs. See, in fact, a comprehensive study by the Investment Company Institute found that the typical retiree in their early 70s was maintaining over 90% of the income they had in their late 50s. Let me go through that again. Even after leaving work, on average, they still had almost the same spending power as they did before. For middle income households, about 93% of their pre-retirement income was replaced, which is practically the entire paycheck coming in without work. Now you're probably wondering, how is this possible? Well, with multiple income streams and smarter spending, the reality is that retirement income doesn't solely come from your savings account. It's more like a puzzle with several pieces. You see, there's Social Security, the unsung hero. And for the average retiree, Social Security provides a solid base. The average benefit is around $1,800 a month for an individual. So that's roughly $22,000 a year, or about $36,000 a year for a retired couple combined. And guess what? Social Security isn't trivial. It supplies at least half of the total income for about 60% of retirees. In fact, nearly 1 in 5 retirees rely on Social Security for all of their retirement income. You see, it's designed to replace a larger share of income for lower earners, and that's roughly 78% of earnings for those in the lowest income brackets on average. So if you weren't a high roller in your working years, Well, Social Security may be able to cover the bulk of your income needs. Even for middle earners, it covers a substantial chunk. See, Social Security dramatically reduces how much you need to pull from your savings accounts. Now, there's also pensions. See, some people over the age of 50 might be lucky enough to still have a job that has a pension. About 38% of near retirees have a traditional pension, and it's essentially a waiting game for them. If that's you, then it's a game changer because a steady monthly check for life means that you have to rely on your 401k even less. I'm going to link to a video right here where we talk about whether or not you should be taking a lump sum versus the annuity if you have that option. And even if you don't have a formal pension, maybe you have a plan to work part-time or do something that you enjoy, or maybe you have rental income or a small business on the side. See, all those little streams of income, or maybe even big streams of income, add up and they lighten the load on your personal savings. You see, and then there's spending. You see, typically spending goes down, not up. And here's a pretty nice surprise. Retirees often spend less as they age, not more. And sure, the first few years, you might see this spending spike in what they call the go-go years, where you're doing a little bit more traveling, more dining out, and finally doing all those things that you postponed while you were working. Now, expenses tend to slow down, and according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the average annual spending for households aged 75 and above is 19% lower than those between 65 and 74. You see, big expenses may vanish because by the time you actually hit retirement, some of your biggest bills might be gone. Your mortgage might be paid off, and that can eliminate what was once a huge monthly cost. Your kids have flown the nest, and so you don't have to worry about college tuition or extra car insurance, and that fridge that kept getting emptied because of your teenagers' midnight snacks, you're no longer stacking that full of snacks every single day. And on top of that, you're no longer socking away 10 to 15% of your salary for retirement savings. You're allowed to actually spend that money now. You see, then taxes can even be lower in retirement if your income drops. Another overlooked factor is where you retire. See, that $1 million figure, or whatever huge number you want to go with, doesn't account for regional cost difference. If you choose to retire in a lower cost area, say a smaller town or a state with a cheaper housing or no income tax, then your money stretches even further. Now let's bring this to life with a real story. See, this is Mark and Linda. They're 65 years old, and they could be a lot like people that you may know. See, Mark and Linda had always heard that they need at least $1 million in the bank to retire, but they did okay over their years. But by their mid-60s, they managed to save about $300,000 for retirement, and they're feeling really nervous. Do they fail? Are they destined to pinch pennies every single day? Well, let's dive into their actual plan and take a look at it. Fast forward, Mark and Linda retired this year at 65 years old, and here's how it plays out for them. See, they sell their big suburban house, downsize to a nice condo, and effectively they're trading a high maintenance home for a simpler one, and they're pocketing some extra cash from the sale. Now, they no longer have a mortgage, and they've added a bit to their savings from the home equity. On top of that, they both file for Social Security and receive about $3,000 per month. They withdraw about $1,000 a month from their $300,000 savings. You add it all up, and Mark and Linda have roughly $48,000 a year to live off of. And you know what? They find out that that's plenty for their needs. And as we dig into their plan, just like we do every single Wednesday, we go through a case study just like this. This is their plan. They have a 98% probability of success to maintain their lifestyle. Their assets, they last until they're 90 years old. Yeah, they're not leaving this large sum of money, but there's also the value in the home that they're able to leave for their children. But the reality is, this is what they needed to actually retire. They didn't need something that was millions of dollars because they weren't spending millions of dollars. They had a simple life. They were happy. They were able to travel where they wanted to, which was nearby to visit their children. They were just happy. And this is the type of retirement that made them comfortable. So when they saw these news headlines telling them that they needed millions of dollars to retire, we kept coming back to the plan saying, look, yes, is it ideal? Do you wish you would have saved more? Obviously, I know they do, and they would tell you that as well. Are they worried a little bit about the future of if they need some sort of large medical expense? Yeah, that is something they've got to keep in mind. But to maintain their lifestyle right now, they're doing just fine, and that's all that matters to them. See, it really is time to rethink what a secure retirement really means. This big retirement myth that you need excessive savings to avoid misery, it's just not true. Now, you likely need a personalized plan more than you need a 7-figure portfolio. Because I know a lot of people who have saved all this money, but they've never actually put together a plan, and they eventually run out of money because they overspent. Whereas people that have saved a modest amount, but have done a lot of planning. They understand what their restrictions are, understand what they can spend, and they feel a lot more confident in retirement. So the next time that someone confidently declares that you need $1 million to retire, well, now you can smile at them and say that you've seen behind the curtain of that myth and you've got this, an actual happy retirement on the horizon without this mountain of money, and now you know why. So if you want to find out what you actually need to retire off of, then click the link in the description below to take the quiz and find out. And if you're thinking about retiring soon, then make sure you check out this video coming up next, where I dive into the withdrawal strategies that you should consider. I'll see you there.